Here are 7 wide receivers we dislike at RotoWire in 2025 fantasy football draft, starting out with T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals. T. Higgins is being drafted as the 12th wide receiver in average drafts. And that is a major problem because T. Higgins has been in the league 5 years, and he has never had a season worth that ADP. T. Higgins has never had 110 targets in a season. He has never had 1,100 yards in a season. Yet he's being valued as a player that's been there, done that multiple times. Yes, the end of last season was great, and many of us remember that explosion in Week 17 against the Broncos. But that said, T. Higgins has a significant injury history. In each of the last 2 years, he's missed 5 games. In the past, he's had games where he's been active but not played many snaps. It has been a long time of disappointment and definitely up and down play and not being available. All those factors, he cannot be drafted as a wide receiver 1 in 12 team leagues. If his ADP was 4 or 5 wide receiver spots lower, certainly understandable. Do not draft T. Higgins at cost. Tyreek Hill is the next wide receiver we don't like. Tyreek Hill is 31 years old this year, and he had a wrist injury last year. And that wrist injury is a reason why many are explaining away his worst year since his rookie season. Last year, Tyreek Hill, 81 catches, only 959 yards. The wrist injury was a real problem, but the 38th percentile yards after the catch, that wasn't wrist related. And that is a number where Tyreek Hill is normally in the 90th percentile. To me, there was a combination of age decline, defenses realizing Tua Tagovailoa was a very limited quarterback and that you can load the front and intermediate of the field and gum up those lanes, and all those together made Tyreek Hill a player that was not a big factor. Tyreek Hill only went over 83 yards 3 times. 8 times Tyreek Hill was under 40 yards. We'd like to forecast a comeback, but Tyreek Hill has said multiple times in the offseason that he is not happy in Miami. He wants out. He's not happy. He's aging. Yards after the catch were terrible last year. Miami, not a good football team. There's a real good chance they start out the season poorly. This is not going to be a formula for Tyreek Hill having a rebound season. And going around wide receiver 15 in drafts, not until outside the 20 would I even consider Tyreek Hill at wide receiver. Next wide receiver we dislike is Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders because he's being drafted inside the top 20 receivers. Terry McLaurin had a magical season last year, but guess what? The only thing that was magical were the touchdowns because his numbers were the same last year as they were every other year of his very good football career. Terry McLaurin will always get you 77 to 87 catches. He'll get you around 1,000 to 1,100 yards. That is normal, and that's what he does. But for most of his career, 2020 to 2023, it was 4 or 5 touchdowns. Last year, 13 touchdowns. Those touchdowns pushed him very high up the fantasy football rankings, and therefore his ADP followed along. Can the touchdowns repeat? Anything can happen. Certainly it can. It's a career outlier. For a 29-year-old player, it's very hard to buy back into it. Deebo Samuel's on the team now. Certainly could take some touchdowns away. This team, offensively, we like them. We like that they address the offensive line. The offense could regress. They had a lot of favorable situations, a lot of shootouts last year. Maybe those go away. There's a lot of variables, but the one thing is, it was an outlier touchdown season. But you are going to get the same yardage and receptions that you do every other year from Terry McLaurin when he's about the wide receiver 23 to 25. But instead this year, you're going to have to pay inside the top 20. So that's why we're going to pass on Terry McLaurin. Next is Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. Zay Flowers, another very good player. He had 1,059 yards last year, 74 catches, but it was a tale of 2 halves. First half of the season, 9 games. Zay Flowers had 18.5 or more PPR points in 5 of those 9 games. But the Ravens found their identity as the season wore on. And remember those 5 18.5 PPR point games in the first 9? Well, he only had one 12-point game from week 10 on because Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson began to work as a tandem running out of shotgun. And all of a sudden, this team did not have many pass attempts. And the pass attempts they had would be split among Flowers, Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman. Therefore, Zay Flowers is going to pick up where he left off last year. There's just not going to be the passing volume, even at wide receiver 28, to support fantasy goodness. If you're enjoying this breakdown, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It helps us keep the fantasy advice coming. And if you want even more of RotoWire's tools, rankings, and insights, we got a 15% discount just for our YouTube viewers. You head to rotowire.com, you choose your subscription, and you use the code YouTube15 at checkout. All right, next receiver we just like, it's Xavier Worthy of the Kansas City Chiefs, usually going around wide receiver 22 in drafts. And Xavier Worthy had a great finish to the season. We remember him through the playoffs, even late in that Super Bowl blowout loss, scoring a late touchdown. And we're expecting great things from Worthy. But here's the problem. We thought Xavier Worthy would come into the league as a deep threat. Well, remember last year, Rashee Rice was lost for the season in week 3. Well, Xavier Worthy over time was being used as a 6.5 yards average depth of target, a short area receiver. Well, guess whose job that is? It's Rashee Rice's job. And Xavier Worthy is not taking that job from Rashee Rice, because Rashee Rice was a high-end wide receiver 1 in that role last year, and he's fully healthy now. Xavier Worthy goes back to being a complimentary player, yet we are paying high ADP price for Xavier Worthy. There is not going to be enough to go around. Hollywood Brown was going to be a big part of the offense. He missed last year. He's back. There just won't be the type of volume to support that level of production. Nice player, Xavier Worthy is, but he is not going to reprise that role he had late last year. That's why we're out on him. Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions is next, and he had a 1,000-yard season and 7 touchdowns last year. But there was really a story that was underlying for Jameson Williams, the defense of the Lions. If you look early in the season, week 3 through 7, they really honed in and ran the ball, played defense. Jared Goff, 25 or fewer attempts in almost all those games. And during that week through 7 span, Jameson Williams averaged 2.5 targets per game. Now, he had a couple big plays in there to give him an average of 8.9 PPR points, so he made something out of it. But the point is this: Detroit's defense should be back to great this year. They were a top 6 unit before those injuries, and they're going to be healthy this year. And some of those young corners, they have experience now. They can run the ball on offense. Jahmyr Gibbs, Superman, David Montgomery. This is a great backfield. We know Jared Goff lost 3 of his interior linemen. It's a shuffled up line. Jared Goff's going to be under pressure. So how is he going to throw the ball deep if teams are pressuring him up the middle? That's going to be a problem. So Jameson Williams, very talented player, but again, heavy rushing attack, playing defense, quarterback that might struggle to get the ball deep. Can't buy in on Jameson Williams at wide receiver 26 cost. All right, next one. Everybody's going to not like this one. Travis Hunter will be a great player someday. He will be, and it won't be very long. Not as a rookie. Travis Hunter, Jacksonville Jaguars. We're hopeful Liam Cohen can make this offense great like he did in Tampa Bay. But here's the thing. Travis Hunter was an outstanding college receiver, an outstanding cornerback in Florida, Colorado Buffaloes. But that said, in the NFL, Jaguars are talking about using him both ways. It's not a talent issue. It's a wear and tear issue. There are other players in the NFL who could have played, who are great receivers, who could have played corner. They didn't put him there. Why? NFL players wear down over the course of the season. They wear down at an equal rate, so you can't tell they're worn down. If Travis Hunter is playing all these snaps on both sides of the ball, he is going to hit a wall by week 10 that he's not recovering from. The physicality of the NFL game is the problem. It's not a question of talent. The other thing is, Travis Hunter, when you watch his tape, he is still moving like a cornerback, not a receiver. You could get away with that in college because he was so much more physically talented. In the NFL, if you don't have the nuance down of the receiving game, it's going to be a real problem. So that's why Travis Hunter, he'll need a year or so to get that footwork down, that route running down, and then he'll be a superstar. But for this year at wide receiver 29 cost, that's not going to happen. He's going to be more of a wide receiver 40 than a wide receiver 29.